They say blood is thicker than water, but they never mention what happens when that blood turns to poison. I used to believe that family meant everything. I used to think that love was unconditional, that parents would support their children no matter what path they chose. I was 22 and devastatingly naive when I learned how wrong I could be. My name is Chloe Maxwell, and this is the story of how I was thrown away like garbage by the people who were supposed to love me most, and how I turned that rejection into the foundation of an empire. The Maxwell family had a reputation to maintain. We lived in a sprawling estate in Connecticut, the kind of old money fortress that screamed respectability and tradition. My father, Richard Maxwell, ran a prestigious investment firm that had been in the family for 3 generations. My mother, Eleanor, was the perfect society wife who organized charity galas and country club events with military precision. My younger sister Ashley was everything they wanted in a daughter: compliant, pretty, focused on her sorority life at Yale and her future marriage to some suitable heir. And then there was me. I'd always been the odd one out, the daughter who asked too many questions and dreamed too big. While Ashley spent her summers at the country club, I was in my room teaching myself to code. While she shopped for designer dresses, I was reading about entrepreneurs who had changed the world. My parents tolerated my interests as a phase, something I would outgrow once I settled into the path they had mapped out for me. Harvard was supposed to fix me. The prestigious degree would give me the credentials to join high society properly, maybe work at father's firm for a few years before finding a suitable husband. It was all planned out, neat and tidy, just like everything else in the Maxwell world. But by my senior year, I had other plans. I had been working on a Fintech startup in secret, pouring every spare moment into developing a platform that would revolutionize how young people manage their finances. The idea had come to me during sophomore year when I watched my roommate struggle to understand basic banking concepts that seemed obvious to someone who had grown up around money. There had to be a better way to make financial literacy accessible and engaging. For 2 years, I had worked in shadows, using fake names and anonymous email addresses to pitch investors. I had faced rejection after rejection, but I kept refining my idea, improving my pitch, learning from every no, and finally, miraculously, it had worked. A seed fund had offered me $1 million to develop my platform. $1 million. More money than most people saw in a lifetime, and they wanted to give it to me for my idea, my vision, my work. I had kept it secret from my family because I knew they would not understand. I knew they would see it as a distraction, a foolish dream that would interfere with my real responsibilities. But now that I had actual investors, actual money, I thought maybe they would finally see that I was serious. Maybe they would finally take me seriously. I was so incredibly wrong. The confrontation happened on a cold February evening during what was supposed to be a routine family dinner. The dining room was formal as always, with Eleanor's good china and crystal glasses catching the light from the chandelier. Ashley was home from Yale for the weekend, chattering about some fraternity party and the new purse she had bought with father's credit card. The conversation was mundane, comfortable in its predictability. I had rehearsed what I would say 100 times, but when the moment came, the words felt clumsy in my mouth. "I have something important to tell you all," I began, setting down my fork. "I've been working on a business project, and I've secured funding from investors. I'm going to take a leave of absence from Harvard to focus on developing it full-time." The silence that followed was deafening. Ashley's fork clattered against her plate. Eleanor's face went pale, then flushed red. Richard's jaw tightened in the way that always preceded one of his explosions. "What kind of business project?" Eleanor asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's a fintech platform," I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. "Financial technology. It's designed to help young adults learn financial literacy through interactive tools and simplified banking services. The investors believe it could revolutionize how people engage with their finances." "Fintech?" Richard's voice dripped with disdain. "You mean some internet nonsense? Some app that will be forgotten in 6 months?" "It's not nonsense, Dad. The market research shows there's a real need for this kind of service. Young adults are struggling with basic financial concepts because nobody teaches them properly. My platform could change that." Ashley laughed, the sound sharp and cruel. "Oh, please, Chloe. You think you're the next Steve Jobs or something? You're just a college student playing with computers." "I'm not playing," I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I have $1 million in seed funding. Real investors believe in this project." The words hit the room like a bomb. Richard's face went from red to purple. Eleanor gasped, one hand flying to her throat. Ashley's mouth fell open in shock. $1 million? Richard's voice was deadly quiet now. "Are you telling me that you have taken money from strangers to pursue some ridiculous fantasy?" "They're not strangers. They're professional investors who understand the market. They believe in my vision." "Your vision?" Eleanor's voice was shrill now. "Chloe, you're throwing away your education at Harvard, one of the most prestigious universities in the world, for what? Some computer game?" "It's not a game, Mom. It's a legitimate business with real potential for growth and social impact." Richard slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal glasses ring. You think this internet garbage can compare to a Harvard degree? You think some toy application is worth more than the reputation and connections that come with finishing your education properly? I think following my passion and building something meaningful is worth more than just collecting credentials to impress people at cocktail parties. The words were out before I could stop them, and I immediately knew I had crossed a line. Richard's face went white with rage. Passion? He snarled. You call this passion? This is stupidity, Chloe. This is you being a spoiled little girl who thinks the world owes her something special. You are destroying your future, and you're humiliating this family in the process. How am I humiliating the family? I'm trying to build something, to create value, to make a difference. You're making a fool of yourself. Eleanor snapped. Do you know what people will say when they find out that Richard Maxwell's daughter dropped out of Harvard to play with computers like some common what, Mom? Some common person who actually works for what they have instead of just inheriting it? Ashley giggled maliciously. Oh, this is rich. Chloe thinks she's better than us because she found some suckers willing to throw money at her little hobby. Tell me, sis, when this whole thing crashes and burns, are you planning to come crawling back here begging for Daddy to fix everything? I won't need to come crawling back because I'm not going to fail. Everyone thinks they won't fail, Richard said coldly. Every foolish dreamer believes they're special, that they're different. But the world has a way of teaching harsh lessons to those who think they're above their station. Above my station? Dad, I'm trying to use my education and skills to build something meaningful. Isn't that what you always said you wanted? For me to make something of myself? I wanted you to make something respectable of yourself. Richard shot back. I wanted you to use your advantages wisely, to build on the foundation this family has provided. Instead, you're throwing it all away for some adolescent fantasy. It's not a fantasy. I have investors, I have a business plan, I have a product that people want. People want all sorts of stupid things, Eleanor said dismissively. That doesn't make them worthwhile. Chloe, you're being incredibly selfish. Think about what this will do to our reputation. Think about how this reflects on your sister, on your father's business. Why should my choices reflect on anyone but me? Because that's how the world works, Richard exploded. Because your actions have consequences for everyone around you. Because when you make stupid decisions, it affects the whole family. So I should give up my dreams to protect your social standing? You should act like a responsible adult instead of a spoiled child, Ashley chimed in. Some of us understand that there are expectations that come with being a Maxwell. And what exactly are those expectations? To sit around looking pretty while living off money that other people earned? To smile and nod and never think for myself? To contribute to the family legacy instead of destroying it, Richard said firmly. To use your privileges responsibly instead of wasting them on nonsense. Building a successful business is wasting my privileges? Building a successful business requires experience, connections, and wisdom that you don't have, Eleanor said. What you're doing is playing entrepreneur with other people's money. It's irresponsible and embarrassing. I looked around the table at my family, seeing clearly for the first time how they truly viewed me. To them, I was not a person with my own dreams and ambitions. I was an extension of their reputation, a reflection of their status. My success or failure mattered only insofar as it affected their standing in their small, elite world. I can't believe you won't even try to understand what I'm doing, I said quietly. I can't believe you won't even consider that I might know something about my own life and my own capabilities. What I understand, Richard said coldly, is that you are being incredibly selfish and short-sighted. What I understand is that you are making decisions that will embarrass this family and waste the opportunities you've been given. Then maybe I should remove myself from the family so I can't embarrass you anymore. The words hung in the air like a challenge. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Richard's face hardened into an expression I had never seen before, cold and cruel and utterly unforgiving. Maybe you should, he said quietly. Maybe if you think you're so much smarter than everyone else, you should go out into the world and prove it without any help from us. Eleanor gasped. Richard, you don't mean that. I mean every word, he said, never taking his eyes off me. If Chloe thinks she can do better on her own, if she thinks our support and our name and our reputation are worthless, then perhaps she should try managing without them. Ashley looked delighted by this turn of events. Oh, this is perfect. Finally, someone is going to teach our little princess what the real world is like. I felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. The hurt was so sharp it almost took my breath away. But underneath it was something else, something fiercer, anger, determination, a burning need to prove them wrong. Fine, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I'll manage without you. I'll build my company, and I'll do it without your help or your approval or your money. Don't be ridiculous, Eleanor said weakly. You can't possibly survive on your own. You've never had to work for anything in your life. Then I guess I'm about to learn. Richard reached into his wallet and pulled out a set of car keys, dropping them on the table with a sharp clink. "These are the keys to the car we bought you. If you're going to be independent, you can start by giving back everything we've provided." I stared at the keys for a moment, understanding that this was it, the point of no return. Once I walked out of this house, there would be no coming back. My family was not just rejecting my dreams, they were rejecting me. But I was done begging for their approval. I was done trying to fit into their narrow vision of what my life should be. I picked up the keys and stood from the table. "I'll pack my things and be gone by morning." "Good," Richard said coldly. "And don't come back until you have something worthwhile to show for yourself. Don't come back until you can prove that you were right and we were wrong." Ashley clapped her hands together like she was watching a particularly entertaining show. "Oh, this is going to be so much fun to watch. I can't wait to see how long it takes before you come crawling back." I looked at each of them one more time, memorizing their faces, their expressions of disdain and dismissal and cruel satisfaction. Someday, I promised myself, they would look at me very differently. "You'll see me again," I said quietly, "but it won't be because I'm crawling back. It will be because I've become everything you said I could never be." I walked out of that dining room and up to my childhood bedroom, where I packed everything I truly needed into 2 suitcases. The rest of it, all the expensive clothes and jewelry and meaningless trinkets that marked me as a Maxwell, I left behind. I was no longer a Maxwell. I was something else entirely. The next morning, I loaded my suitcases into my old Honda Civic, the car I had bought myself with money from summer jobs, and drove away from the only home I had ever known. In the rearview mirror, I watched the Maxwell estate disappear behind the trees, and I felt something break inside me, something that had been holding me back. I was free, terrifyingly, completely free. The first few months were harder than I had ever imagined. My $1 million in funding sounds like a fortune, but when you're paying for housing, food, equipment, legal fees, and all the other expenses that come with starting a business, it disappears with frightening speed. I found a small apartment in a marginal neighborhood, the kind of place where the heat didn't always work, and the walls were thin enough to hear every argument and crying baby in the building. I turned the living room into my office, setting up a workspace with folding tables and second-hand computer equipment. I worked 18-hour days, surviving on coffee and determination and the burning need to prove that I was more than the spoiled princess my family thought I was. There were moments when I wondered if they had been right. When my code wouldn't compile, when potential partners turned me down, when I lay awake at night wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. There were nights when I was so exhausted I cried myself to sleep, grieving not just for my family but for the comfortable certainty I had given up. But every time I was tempted to quit, I remembered the look on Richard's face when he threw those car keys on the table. I remembered Ashley's cruel laughter, Eleanor's dismissive tone. I remembered how small they had made me feel, how worthless, how naive, and I kept working. Slowly, painfully, my platform began to take shape. I had called it Finance Forward, and it was everything I had envisioned and more. The user interface was clean and intuitive, the educational content was engaging without being condescending, and the financial tools were sophisticated enough to be genuinely useful while remaining accessible to complete beginners. I beta tested it with college students, incorporating their feedback and refining the features. I networked with other entrepreneurs, learning from their successes and failures. I read everything I could about business development, marketing, customer acquisition, and scaling. The first major breakthrough came 8 months after I had left home. A tech blog discovered Finance Forward and wrote a glowing review, calling it the financial education tool Gen Z has been waiting for. Within a week, I had 10,000 new users. Within a month, I had 50,000. The user growth was intoxicating, but it also presented new challenges. My servers were crashing under the load, customer service requests were overwhelming my tiny team, and I was burning through my remaining funding at an alarming rate. I needed more money, which meant I needed more investors. The second round of fundraising was even more grueling than the first. I pitched to dozens of venture capital firms, facing skepticism, condescension, and outright dismissal. Many investors saw a young woman and assumed I was in over my head. Others questioned whether there was really a market for financial education, whether young people would actually use the tools I was building. But I had data now. I had user metrics and growth projections and testimonials from customers whose financial lives had been transformed by my platform. I had proof that my vision was not just viable, but necessary. After 3 months of rejections and near misses, I finally found my champion. Sarah Chen was a partner at a prestigious Silicon Valley firm who had herself started her first company at 23. She understood what I was trying to build, and more importantly, she believed I could build it. The Series A funding round brought in $15 million. $15 million that would allow me to hire a real team, upgrade my infrastructure, and expand my marketing efforts. $15 million that validated everything I had sacrificed to get here. I hired carefully, bringing on engineers and designers and marketers who shared my vision for making financial education accessible and engaging. I moved the company to a real office space, nothing fancy but professional and functional. I started paying myself a real salary for the first time in over a year. And slowly, gradually, Finance Forward became exactly what I had always known it could be. The platform now served over 500,000 users, helping them understand everything from basic budgeting to complex investment strategies. We had partnerships with major banks and credit unions, licensing deals with universities, and a growing library of educational content that was being used in high schools across the country. More importantly, we were making a real difference in people's lives. I received letters and emails from users who had paid off debt, started emergency funds, or made their first investments using the tools and knowledge they had gained from Finance Forward. I heard from parents whose teenagers had taught them about financial planning, from college students who had avoided the credit card debt that plagued their peers, and from young professionals who were building wealth instead of just getting by. This was what I had been trying to explain to my family that night at dinner. This was the vision they had dismissed as childish fantasy. As my company grew, I began to hear whispers about my family through mutual acquaintances in the business world. Richard's investment firm was struggling, having made some poor decisions in the changing market. Eleanor was no longer the social queen she had once been, as other families had surpassed the Maxwells in wealth and influence. Ashley had graduated from Yale but was drifting aimlessly, burning through trust fund money with no clear direction or purpose. I felt no satisfaction in hearing about their difficulties. If anything, it made me sad for the family we might have been if they had chosen to support rather than reject me. But that sadness was tempered by something stronger, the knowledge that I had built something meaningful without them. I had proven to myself and to the world that their assessment of me had been wrong. I was not a naive dreamer or a spoiled princess. I was an entrepreneur, a leader, a woman who could turn vision into reality. The recognition came gradually, then all at once. First, I was named to Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Then Incorporated magazine featured Finance Forward as one of the fastest-growing companies in America. TechCrunch called me the Fintech founder who's revolutionizing financial education. The biggest moment came when I was invited to speak at the Global Economic Forum, sharing the stage with CEOs and world leaders to discuss the future of financial technology. Standing at that podium, looking out at an audience of the most powerful people in business and government, I thought about the girl who had been told her dreams were worthless. That girl felt very far away now. The Forbes cover story was titled, "The Billion-Dollar Dropout: How Chloe Chen Built a Fintech Empire." They had gotten my name wrong in the headline. I had legally changed it after leaving my family, dropping Maxwell for Chen in honor of my mentor Sarah, but the story inside was accurate in every detail that mattered. The article described my journey from Harvard dropout to successful entrepreneur, including the family conflict that had sparked my independence. The writer had been respectful but honest about the Maxwell family's rejection of my dreams, and the contrast between their dismissal and my eventual success was stark. I knew my family would see the article. It was impossible to miss, displayed prominently in every airport and bookstore in the country. I wondered what they would think when they saw that their internet nonsense had been valued at over $1 billion in our most recent funding round. I did not have to wonder for long. The first contact came in the form of a phone call. I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant buzzed in to tell me that Richard Maxwell was on the line. "Tell him I'm unavailable," I said without hesitation. "He says it's urgent family business." "Tell him I don't have a family." The calls continued for weeks. Richard, Eleanor, even Ashley, all trying to reach me through my office, my assistant, mutual acquaintances. I ignored them all. Then they began showing up. The first time I saw them, I was leaving my office building after a late evening meeting. My driver was waiting at the curb, but before I could reach the car, I heard a familiar voice calling my name. "Chloe! Chloe, please, just give us a moment." I turned to see Eleanor standing on the sidewalk, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. Her expensive clothes could not hide the fact that she had lost weight, that there were new lines around her eyes, that her perfectly styled hair was just a little less perfect than it used to be. Behind her stood Richard and Ashley, both looking uncomfortable and uncertain. For a moment, I was tempted to stop, to hear what they had to say. But then I remembered the contempt in Richard's voice when he had called my dreams internet garbage. I remembered Ashley's cruel laughter, Eleanor's concern about what people would think. I walked past them without a word and got into my car. They tried again a few days later, this time waiting outside my apartment building, then outside my gym, then outside a restaurant where I was meeting with investors. Each time, I ignored them completely. The letters started arriving after that. Handwritten notes from Eleanor, formal business correspondence from Richard, casual texts from Ashley. All of them said the same thing in different ways. They were sorry, they had been wrong, they wanted to reconcile. I read the first few, then began having my assistant dispose of them unopened. The final confrontation came at a charity gala I was hosting for financial literacy education. It was a black tie event at the Met, attended by hundreds of influential people from business, politics, and entertainment. I had donated $5 million to establish a foundation that would bring financial education to underserved communities, and the gala was celebrating the launch. I was giving a speech about the importance of financial literacy when I saw them in the audience. Richard and Eleanor, dressed in their formal best but looking oddly diminished among the crowd of genuinely powerful people. After my speech, as I was mingling with guests and accepting congratulations, they approached me. "Chloe," Richard said, his voice carefully controlled, "that was a beautiful speech. We're very proud of what you've accomplished." I looked at him for a long moment, this man who had once held such power over my sense of self-worth. He looked smaller than I remembered, older and less certain. I asked quietly, "Are you proud of what I've accomplished, or are you proud of what you think I can do for you now?" Eleanor stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Darling, we know we made mistakes. We know we hurt you terribly, but you're our daughter. We love you, and we want to make things right." "You love me now," I said. "You love me now that I'm successful, now that I'm someone worth knowing. But you didn't love me when I needed you to believe in me." "That's not true," Richard protested. "We always loved you. We just wanted what was best for you." "No," I said firmly. "You wanted what was best for your reputation. You wanted me to fit into your narrow idea of what my life should look like, and when I refused, you threw me away." Ashley, who had been hanging back, stepped forward. "Chloe, I know I was horrible to you. I know I said terrible things. But I was young and stupid and jealous. Can't you forgive us? Can't we be a family again?" I looked at the three of them, these people who had once been the center of my world. I felt no anger anymore, no bitterness, but I felt no love either. They were strangers to me now, strangers who happened to share my DNA. "You taught me something valuable," I told them. "You taught me that I didn't need your approval to succeed. You taught me that I was stronger than I thought I was. You taught me to value myself even when the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally decided I wasn't worth their time." "Please," Eleanor whispered, "please don't shut us out forever. We're still your family." "No," I said gently but firmly. "You stopped being my family the night you chose your pride over your daughter. You made it clear that I was only valuable to you if I lived up to your expectations, and I'm not interested in conditional love." I turned to walk away, but Richard caught my arm. "You can't just walk away from us. We're your parents. We raised you. We gave you everything." I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. "You gave me life and education and opportunities, and I'm grateful for that. But I gave myself everything that actually mattered. I gave myself the courage to follow my dreams, the strength to survive your rejection, and the determination to build something meaningful." I gently removed his hand from my arm. "I hope you find happiness. I hope you find peace, but I won't be part of your lives anymore." That chapter ended the night you told me to leave. I walked away from them for the last time, moving through the crowd of people who respected me, valued me, believed in me. I felt no sadness, no regret. I felt only the deep satisfaction of knowing that I had become exactly who I was meant to be. 6 months later, I learned that the Maxwell family had lost their house. Richard's firm had finally collapsed after a series of bad investments, and they had been forced to sell the estate to pay their debts. Ashley had moved back in with them before the sale, having burned through her trust fund without ever finding a career or purpose. When the house went up for auction, I bought it. Not because I wanted to live there again, but because I wanted to transform it into something meaningful. I turned the sprawling estate into a residential facility for young entrepreneurs who needed a place to develop their ideas. The bedrooms became dormitories, the formal dining room became a co-working space, the library became a resource center for startup development. I called it the Phoenix House, a place where dreams that had been dismissed elsewhere could take flight. I never spoke to my family again, but I heard through mutual acquaintances that they moved to a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. Richard took a job at another investment firm, working for people who had once been his peers. Eleanor gave up her social activities and volunteer work. Ashley eventually found work as a marketing assistant at a small firm. I felt no satisfaction in their downfall, but I felt no pity either. They had made their choices, just as I had made mine. As for me, I continued to build. Finance Forward grew into a global platform, serving millions of users in dozens of countries. I started other companies, invested in other entrepreneurs, and used my wealth to support causes I believed in. I found love with someone who admired my ambition rather than fearing it, who celebrated my success rather than feeling threatened by it. I built friendships with people who valued authenticity over pedigree, substance over status. I created the family I had always wanted, one based on mutual respect and unconditional support rather than expectations and conditions. Looking back now, I can see that the night my parents rejected my dreams was not the end of my story, but the beginning. It was the night I stopped being their daughter and started being myself. It was the night I learned that the only approval I truly needed was my own. They had tried to break me, thinking I was fragile crystal that would shatter under pressure. They had not realized that I was forged from something much stronger, something that only grew harder and more beautiful under heat. They had thrown me away like garbage, never imagining that from that rejection would grow something more valuable than anything they had ever built. They had called me worthless, never understanding that worth is not something given by others but something claimed by yourself. I am Chloe Chen, and I am the legacy of the cast out. I am proof that the people who break you do not get to define you. I am proof that the family you build can be stronger than the family you're born into. I am proof that sometimes, being thrown away is the first step toward finding where you truly belong.